Joni had never expected his new job at the marketing firm to take such a turn. From the very first day, he noticed her Elena. She was captivating, with a grace and confidence that drew everyone's attention. Married to the company's senior executive Daniel, Elena seemed to have it all. Joni admired her from a distance, keeping things professional, though the stolen glances they exchanged during meetings hinted at something more simmering beneath the surface. At first, it was all in his head. He chucked it up to a harmless crush on a married woman, something he would eventually shake off. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. Their interactions were always brief. A shared smile, or a lingering look when no one else was watching. She was poised, always in control. But there was something in her eyes that told a different story of longing, perhaps, or a curiosity that mirrored his own. They worked in different departments, and yet they always found themselves crossing paths, as if drawn together by an invisible force. Joni couldn't help but wonder if she felt it too. One late afternoon, the office was nearly empty. The sun had begun its descent, casting a warm golden glow over the desks. Joni was finishing up a report when Elena approached his desk, her heels clicking softly against the floor. "Hey, Joni," she said, her voice light and casual, though her eyes lingered on his for just a moment longer than usual. "Do you have a minute? I need a fresh pair of eyes on this presentation." He glanced around the office, noticing that almost everyone had left for the day. Nodding, he smiled. Of course, unhappy to help, they walked to her office. A small yet elegantly designed space filled with framed photos of her and Daniel on tropical vacations, at business events, and in cozy home settings. The photos only served as a reminder of the line Joni knew he could never cross. That didn't stop his heart from beating a little faster as she closed the door behind them. Elena leaned over her desk, pointing at the laptop screen. "I'm not sure about this slide. Do you think it's too much?" she asked, her voice closer than it needed to be. Joni leaned in beside her, their arms brushing lightly. His pulse quickened. "No, I think it works. It's bold, but that's what makes it stand out." She smiled, a slow, knowing smile, and for a moment, neither of them moved. The space between them seemed to shrink, and Joni could feel the tension mounting, an unspoken understanding passing between them. He could sense it, the same pull he'd been feeling for months. But before either of them could say anything, her phone buzzed on the desk. Elena glanced at the screen, her expression changing slightly. "It's Daniel," she said quietly, as if her husband's name carried weight in the room. She hesitated for a moment before silencing the phone and turning her attention back to Joni. "He's out of town for the evening," she explained, her voice soft, almost vulnerable. "But he'll be back soon." There was something in the way she said it that sent a shiver down Joni's spine. He could feel the line they were dangerously close to crossing, and yet neither of them stepped away. "Elena," Joni began, unsure what to say. His voice trailed off as she met his gaze, her eyes searching his for something, perhaps reassurance, or maybe the same desire he was struggling to contain. "Joni," she whispered, stepping closer, her breath warm against his skin. "Let's hurry. My husband will be back soon." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Joni's heart pounded in his chest as he grappled with the weight of the moment. Part of him wanted to pull away, to remind her of her marriage, to tell her that this was wrong. But another part, the part that had been drawn to her from the very beginning, couldn't resist the magnetic pull between them. Elena reached out, her fingers lightly brushing his arm. It was such a simple touch, yet it sent the surge of electricity through him. He could feel the warmth of her skin, the soft tremble in her hand, as if she too was caught in the same internal struggle. The air between them crackled with tension, the office suddenly feeling much smaller, or intimate. "I can't," Joni said, his voice barely a whisper. But even as he spoke, he found himself stepping closer to her, closing the distance between them. "I know," Elena replied, her voice filled with a mix of longing and regret. "We shouldn't," but she trailed off, her eyes pleading with his, as if asking him to make the decision for both of them. The seconds stretched out, each one laden with unspoken desires. Joni could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He knew what was at stake, knew that one wrong move could change everything for both of them. And yet, the thought of turning away, of walking out of her office and pretending that nothing had ever happened, felt impossible. Just as he was about to say something, Elena's phone buzzed again. This time she didn't ignore it. She picked it up, glancing at the screen, her expression shifting once more. "He's on his way back," she said softly, almost to herself. Her words snuck Joni back to reality, the fog of desire lifting just enough for him to regain his composure. "I should go," he said quickly, stepping back, his voice more steady now. "Before things get complicated," Elena nodded, her face a mixture of disappointment and relief. "You're right, it's better this way." But as Joni turned to leave, she caught his hand, holding it for just a moment longer. "Joni," she whispered, her eyes meeting his. "Thank you." He wasn't sure what she was thanking him for not taking things too far, for understanding the boundaries they couldn't cross. Whatever it was, Joni simply nodded, giving her hand a gentle squeeze before letting go. As he walked out of her office and into the empty hallway, he could still feel the weight of her touch, the lingering tension between them. He knew this wouldn't be the last time they found themselves in this situation. The attraction was undeniable, and though they hadn't crossed the line tonight, the temptation was still there, simmering beneath the surface, waiting for another opportunity. But for now, they had both managed to hold back, to resist the pull of something that could ruin everything. Joni didn't know how long they could keep it up, but he knew one thing for certain: this was far from over.